Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you my take on OT security relative to endpoints. As the discussion promises, I want to talk about how we feel security in OT can be better enhanced by starting to focus directly on the endpoints and the inherent risk there. By way of agenda, I would like to start with a bit of an introduction to who Verve is, as well as who I am. I then want to get into the background of my topic. There's considerable discussion around perimeter and monitoring type of capabilities, which is absolutely fantastic. But our premise is that the real security risk, and therefore the gain in security improvements, is gained by addressing the endpoint themselves, where the risk is most prevalent. I want to talk a little bit about what are the table stakes, the basic requirements for endpoint security. It's great to have a theory, but to be able to make sure we understand what we're getting into up front and what ramifications different decisions at the front end can make, i.e. around inventory or complexity of your environment. But also switching from basic requirements into some of the recommendations for how to actually remediate some of that, including architecture and philosophy. I then want to bring, as promised, a case study of someone that we're working with that's actually realizing these benefits so that we can see the practical application of these recommendations, and then a summary to leave with you the highlights, at least, of the various components I'm trying to make sure that we articulate. This is a very complex topic, a short time frame, so I'm trying to keep it high level, but hopefully we can leave some summary points for you that are of value for your time spent with us here today. As I mentioned, I work for Verve Industrial Protection. Suffice it to say, we've been in this industry 25 years as OT systems integrators. We started as DCS programmers, PLC upgrades, etc. 12 years ago, we started to build our security capabilities. I personally have worked in this industry for almost 20 years now, working all around the world in all sizes and shapes of organizations. And so I'm hoping that I'm able to bring a general approach to everybody here. We realize that there's different sizes and shapes of organization, but the same basic premise holds true in most cases relative to securing OT, relative to the challenges and the objectives. So what would I do if I had to start from scratch? I just want to put this out here because obviously we understand that security is a holistic approach, multiple security functions and capabilities coming together. And as you as practitioners have to make sure that you're careful about what you're taking care of on multiple fronts. We can talk largely in OT security risk about patching, but really we know that OT is very special. We can't always do patching. I've got a little bit about that in more detail coming up. But to look at simply, perimeter detection or simply inventory or patching in isolation potentially muddies the water in terms of our perspective. We need to look at what we're doing in general and how we can make investments that provide returns across multiple of these. And so as we do this, I just wanted to make sure we understood that endpoint protection for me isn't simply a patching tool, isn't simply antivirus or whitelisting or lockdown. It's actually helping to build multiple functions within the OT environment to help protect and reduce risk iteratively over multiple practices. So background, perimeter network monitoring security is very well established, very capable. There's some amazing technology out there, but the endpoints, however, continue to grow in number and risk continues to rise. OT, therefore, is falling further behind on security debt, as I call it, that can only be remediated if we actually go to the endpoint. I've seen debates in the market, some of my esteemed co-speakers talking about the folly of not patching, or that we can't patch, or that patching is really sort of a fool's errand. I think that misses the mark on two fronts. The first is that OT endpoint security is not just about patching. It's about all the compensating controls and the fallback angles that you need to deploy and pull to be able to protect your device. And secondly, I was at a conference once and a unidirectional gateway speaker was saying, well, you don't need to worry about 800 missing patches on an endpoint if you had a unidirectional gateway. To which I asked the audience, of you operators out there, how many are okay with saying it's all right to have 800, critical risks on each of my HMIs in my facility? The answer is usually not well supported by the operators. So why is it so hard? There's a significant reluctance to even touch the endpoint. OEM concerns, agent-based scanning, there's all sorts of risks. We get it. There's a lack of staff. the people that we're asking to do this in the facility, or if the OT says, well, we'll do it when we can get to it, the reality is that they're often double and triple shifted with respect to responsibilities versus time available in their day. So the sheer volume of work to worker ratio is overwhelming. And of course, in OT, it's not so straightforward. It's not a homogeneous environment. We can't just simply apply a patch or group policy. Even if we did have a patch, we'd have to make sure that we tested across multiple different security function or OS types and configurations and situations. And so even the so-called straightforward stuff can become difficult. So when we look at exactly, this type of workflow around understanding that there's a risk in IT, or rather in OT, we get all sorts of different workarounds and decision trees, and we have questions around different context in here. And this is sort of the background for what I'm trying to say. If I want to be able to pull a risk forward and understand it and its relative impact to me, I can't simply say, well, it's on all Windows 2008. I think I have 50 of these. I need to understand much more around it, like the OT context. What is the asset's criticality? Where is it located? And what compensating controls might I be able to apply to this? Well, to be able to do that, we need to have a much more robust inventory and capability, or what I call insight, around the endpoints. I need to know all of my assets, but I need to know everything about them. When you take an agent to an endpoint, you can know 1,100 characteristics about that asset, including dormant administrative accounts or software that's installed that doesn't need to be there. Things like that aren't typically transmitted across the subnet, but are exploitation points or land and expand prizes for malware, hackers, or other security risks. So really, when we talk inventory, we don't talk IP and MAC address. We talk about everything we might need to know about the asset. We then advocate that you add context to that asset, its criticality, its location, the owner of that asset. Because when we can't apply a patch, we may want to apply compensating controls, or maybe disable a service temporarily, like remote desktop, while we're trying to figure out how to patch for Bluekey. The final measure around managing endpoints, though, is the ability to act. And again, we advocate the agent-based approach because not only can I know everything about the endpoint, and of course, agents are only on OS-based devices. We advocate other technology collection for the other information. But that agent on the OS-based devices also lets me do anything remotely under certain circumstances and control, of course. But anything that I could do at the desktop, I can do through the agent. And so I have significant control with very granular security and handling. And at all possible, all of the above: inventory, collection of context, and the ability to act. We need to automate this as much as possible in order to be able to get any sort of scale in our security. So what do we think that looks like? For us, that means an architecture that has local plant people, data coming from the facilities, coming up into a central or regional databases, and those databases can be collectively aggregated to a single reporting console. That single reporting console allows a small set of specialized team members to analyze and remediate risk and push down very, very controlled actions in automated circumstances. And I'll show you in a case study right now. What does that look like? We have a client, large operating company with thousands of miles of assets, a distributed team of SCADA operators, thousands of assets comprised of varying OS types: Linux, Windows, Unix, etc. All assets are spread out across hundreds of miles of facilities and locations. Now, without a think global, act local, automated sort of end agent point of scenario, out came a risk. And what happened was dozens of people in spreadsheets went into multiple meetings, not a real concrete understanding of scope, and many guesses and assumptions were made. A manual patch process begun. The reality was it took manual tracking, and in total, 6 full-time staff over 10 weeks to complete, 2,500 hours spent reaching 90% coverage. With the global local program, the central team had 360-degree view of the assets, location, criticality, owner, etc. They could first start by kicking off a meeting with an accurate list. They could disable remote desktop, and they could auto distribute, but not deploy, the patching files so they were ready on the endpoints when they were in a position to proceed. On and on, you can see very carefully that there was a significant gain in this sort of approach. So in summary, inventory with context, the ability to take actions, but alerting and reporting is where you get the insight. And the conclusion is that the endpoint is where the risk is. Agentless takes you right to the source. Architecture and automation let you streamline, and automated reporting tracks status and progress. That's it for me today. I hope this was of value. I'm sorry it was too quick, but if you'd like to learn more, please reach out on any one of those communication paths right there. And thank you again to the organizers for this opportunity. Significantly impressed with this opportunity and hope this was value to everyone on the show.